There's a new slasher icon in town. His name is Leslie Vernon. Let's review Behind the Mask. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon stars Nathan Basil, Angela Goethals, Robert England, and is directed by Scott Glosserman. What is up, guys? On my Patreon page right now, there is a heated battle going on between this movie, Behind the Mask, sent to me by Dave Vanderhoff. Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate that. And this movie, The People Under the Stairs, sent to me by Holly Klein. And it was literally 14-14. I had to post another vote. And currently, I think Behind the Mask is going to win it. So this will be the first review to go out of my catalog reviews. On my Patreon page, I started this new thing where probably like once a month, I'm going to let them choose my next review. And I'll give them like 3 choices. And if you want to see like what my upcoming reviews are going to be, like catalog reviews, this does not include new releases, then go to my Letterboxd page. I have a playlist set up right there. You can see what's in the kitty. I'm not saying it's 100% concrete. I do get impulsive sometimes. If I see a movie and I'm like, I have to talk about this right now, I could wedge something in there. But for the most part, that is my schedule. So go to my Letterboxd. You can check that out. And if you're a patron, I'll let you guys actually pick the order, because that's not necessarily the order. But anyway, we're going to review Behind the Mask, Rise of Leslie Vernon. I had never seen this movie. And when I announced that I had not seen this movie, I had so many people tell me, I can't believe you haven't seen Rise of Leslie Vernon. And now I see why, because of how unique this movie is. And I'm a slasher fanatic. I freaking love slashers. I'm one of the very few guys, if not the only guy on YouTube that has a top 50 slashers video. So I take my slashers pretty seriously. This is different than every other slasher I've ever seen, just because of the format. I mean, it's mostly a documentary up until like the last act. I'd say the first hour of this movie, it's a documentary style. But the documentary style fits into the plot, so it all makes sense. And then the last act, you actually get your full movie. I mean, completely serious. Most of the comedy is yanked right out of it. And it works. Everything about this movie structurally works so well. So anyway, quick plot synopsis. You have this documentary crew led by Taylor. She is pretty much the host of the documentary, and they've been invited to actually interview Leslie Vernon.
Terror so long held by the likes of Voorhees, Myers, and Kruger. This man's name is Leslie Vernon.
Leslie Vernon is a young up-and-comer slasher killer. It sounds silly, right? But they meet Leslie, and he takes them step by step through the process of pretty much what we know as a slasher movie. And and he explains the ins and outs, and they talk about every single trope that slasher movies have. All the way down to the final girl. They call it the survivor girl.
You came to me to find out how guys like Mike and Chucky and Freddy do what they do, not why. I can't just sit here on the first night I ever met you and explain it to you. It's got to come from your own understanding of the process. Or not.
There's just so many fun moments throughout this. It's really like looking behind the curtain of any slasher movie. And one thing I love about this too is it really pays homage to the big 3, Michael, Freddy, and Jason. I mean, the beginning of the movie, they literally go to the locations and they show you Elm Street, they show you Haddonfield, they show you Crystal Lake. And I got a kick out of that. I mean, this is really a love letter to slasher movies, but more than that, it's a love letter to the icons. And we owe a lot to the icons because they're the ones that kept slasher movies alive for, a good 20, 30 years.
Those boys lifted it to a whole other level. They made an art form of it, turned themselves into legends by returning like a curse over and over again. That was a radical change in philosophy.
Halloween is still going today. It's pretty awesome. But one thing I love about this is how it digs into the nuts and bolts of, the killer psychologically. And it goes pretty deep. It talks about like these almost like Freudian ideas, how the killer is in a way in love with the survivor girl. And what's funny is they infuse like comedy throughout all this stuff. And from a Freudian standpoint, they literally get down to like the final girl using an axe as a weapon being like a phallic thing. And when, you know, in the final chase in like the wooded glen, that being like the birth canal or the rebirth. I mean, they dig deep into this movie. It's pretty interesting, actually.
If the closet represents the womb, what's this?
The birth canal?
Well done, Taylor. Yonic imagery is extremely important in our work.
And it really kind of made me look at slasher movies in a different way, maybe dig a little deeper into them, because there's a lot of hidden themes in these movies. Hey, check out my top 10 hidden meanings in a horror video too, by the way. Shameless plug. You know, I always say it's hard for a horror comedy to be effective because sometimes you can bleed too much into the comedy and then you lose your scares. You know, or sometimes horror movies, they take themselves way too seriously. And if they're not like Exorcist scary, then they can fall on their face. This movie, I think, does it almost perfectly. It really does. It does get a little too comedic throughout the first hour, but luckily the comedy is really funny.
You never put it together again. Makes it bad for all of us. It just cheapens it.
Also, there's this character, Eugene, who is like the veteran. And Eugene tells them about the old way of doing things and the difference between 70s and 80s slashers compared to like millennium slashers. You know, this does for the slasher genre more than what Scream even did. But it's cool too because it keeps you guessing, like, who could Eugene be? And if you do your research, Eugene was kind of intended to be Billy from Black Christmas. It's never said in the movie, but that was the filmmakers' thought process when they were crafting the character of Eugene. From our standpoint, he could represent pretty much any killer aside from Michael, Freddy, and Jason from the 70s. He even mentions like 60s and 70s. So he could even represent like, you know, some of the old Giallo killers, all that good stuff. That's what I love about this movie. It really lets you play around with the slasher genre and it casts a lot of like what ifs. Now, one of the best things about this movie, I think, is the structure because it sets up this whole documentary thing. It really sets up this idea of a red herring early on, you know, because who is the final girl? And then when they get into the last act, we find out that the final girl is not the actual final girl or survivor girl. And we find out that the actual final girl all along was Taylor. And Taylor, let's face it, it's not really said, but I can probably guess she's not a virgin. So the survivor girl could be a virgin in theory, but not, you know, literally a virgin. You know, Taylor seems like a good, wholesome type of person. Now, every slasher has like their signature kills, and I just like how they even deal with the idea of like the chase and the kill and all that. You know, there's one scene where Leslie's like exercising and hitting a punching bag, and she's asking him, what's with all the cardio and everything? And he's like, are you kidding me?
Why so much?
Well, you gotta be able to run like a freaking gazelle without getting winded. Plus, there's that whole thing of making it look like you're walking, and everybody else is running their asses off.
They poke fun of every little trope that we see in these types of movies. And I like the weapon in this movie. It's kind of like a farmer's hook. So, you know, there's a couple of nice little gruesome neck kills in there. But really, the big money shot is the actual post hole digger. I've never seen a post hole digger kill, but he has the victim down. He does a post hole, and I've used a post hole digger quite a few times, actually. Right into his heart, pulls his heart out, and puts it in his hand. That's like top 5 material right there.
Leslie! No more. It ends here.
And of course, I can't not talk about Robert Englund in this. He has a small part, but who he plays is so important in this because he is the Ahab. He's the Dr. Loomis. He's literally dressed like Dr. Loomis in this movie. But I love that scene where he's introduced because Leslie Vernon just goes completely ape shit. And he was like, did you get that? Did you get that? We got an Ahab. Holy crap, we got an Ahab. It's like we caught the whale, pretty much.
Did you get that? You got it. You got it?
We totally
You got
got
the
it.
guy coming out?
The whole
No,
thing.
but you got the guy, right?
whole thing.
You got the guy?
Yeah.
Woo!
To have an Ahab in a slasher movie elevates it to A-level slasher. I'm saying it. That's just pretty much the way it goes. If you have an Ahab, and it seems like very few of them have an effective Ahab, then you're up there in the top. I'd even say John Saxon for the first first Nightmare movie is kind of an Ahab, and the third one. But nobody can ever touch Dr. Loomis. But it was a nice thing to have Robert Englund come in and actually play that character. And I would welcome Robert Englund as an actual Ahab type of character. You know, even like maybe Loomis. I'd be curious to see what he could do as Loomis. They didn't really give him too much to play with in this movie, but it was still cool seeing him and seeing him as an Ahab. But guys, this movie, so refreshing, giving it a super high purchase worthy. Excellent movie, and it's definitely one that I'll rewatch quite often, actually. It's a fun slasher movie at the end of the day. I'd say the last act of the movie is better than the first portion of the movie, but the first portion is definitely necessary. Otherwise, you have just a standard slasher movie. So, post in the comments your thoughts on Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays, we do Free Fall Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.